As you may know, Wes Huff had a meteoric rise after his infamous debate with Billy Carson to subsequent appearances on Joe Rogan, Flagrant Podcast, and podcast all over the YouTube stratosphere. But what many don't know is how speakers, authors, apologists like Wes Huff go from working in obscurity and anonymity to finding that sweet spot of their purpose and calling. And this idea of knowing your calling, walking in your purpose, knowing the difference between selfish desires and God's desire for your life are some of the most frequently asked questions I get in person when I speak at conferences and events, and things that we see online in the comments section from many of you. So that's why I think today's conversation with Wes Huff will be extremely valuable for you. We're pulling the curtain back. And I also put all of this together in my brand new book, Godly Ambition, which Wes Huff actually gave an incredible endorsement for that will be peeking in the middle of this conversation. And this book outlines the roadmap of what many people from the outside will say Christians who found success have taken. How to walk in your purpose, how to know your identity, how to defeat distractions, how to find community, collaborate, and walk ultimately in the fullness of your true potential in Christ. It's rich in scripture and theology, while at the same time being extremely practical to help you move the needle in your life today. And this is the same roadmap and theological framework that the Christians you see on this page have also used to walk in their calling. So pre-order the book now at your favorite retailer and get a bunch of pre-order bonuses like the intro and the first 4 chapters of me reading them live on camera and giving you some of the backstory now. All right, go to mygodlyambition.com to claim your pre-order bonus. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today we have an amazing guest with us today, the one and only Wes Huff. Thanks for joining us. I wanted to have you on, man, because oftentimes when we're talking about other aspects of whether it's YouTube, whether it's business, whether it's ministry, people always have this phrase, you don't really want to know how the sausage is made, right? And what I appreciate about you is that the more I get to know you, the more I discover like how consistent and persistent and faithful you have been behind the scenes for decades before anybody ever knew who Wes Huff was. And I kind of wanted to get in that and peel away at that a little bit, because I think a lot of Christians are looking at the kind of stuff you're doing, the kind of stuff I'm doing, the appearances, the social media presence, and they aspire for these things. They aspire to become influential, but they're missing some of the foundational aspects of it. And so unlike the sausage being made, which is kind of a negative term, this is different. This is, hey, the way that your life has been built up in the last decade and a half before anybody knew who you were, has been extremely honorable because you leaned in, were faithful, worked hard, and that's expressed itself in many different ways. And so for folks who don't know some of that backstory, like not the where you're from and the FAQ type stuff, but like the backstory of how you developed the expertise and the patience to be able to have the breakout moments, the preparation that led to the opportunities that then exploded Wes Huff and who we know you are to be today.
Yeah, well, I think a big part of that is that word you used, faithfulness. It's like we're just called to be faithful. We're not called to be influential. We're not called to be like an influencer. God will use you despite you. And that can be on so many different layers. Like I think of my grandfather recently passed away, and my grandfather was just a quiet, faithful steward of who he was. Never graduated high school. He wasn't an academic. He wasn't, someone who was known on a grand level. And yet you hear all these stories of people who he just influenced by his testimony of a godly, Christ-centered life. And so, that's really what we are required to do. I think a lot of people look at the Ruslans or, the Frank Turek's, the William Lane Craig's of the world, and they feel like they need to be hitting the home run, when in reality, Scripture is just calling us to step up to the plate. That's it. And the confidence of what Scripture tells us about what God will do is that if we take the opportunities prayerfully to step up to the plate, God is going to be the one that hits the home run, no matter what it is. And I think that should give us confidence, because his sheep will hear his voice. And we just need to be ready. We need to be prayerful in looking for the opportunities to let the Spirit lead us and take advantage of that. Always be ready to give an answer for the reason for the hope that we have. But that implies that we're leading a life that is expressing a hope that people are asking us about. And so in one sense, when you read that, 1 Peter 3:15 and 16 verse, in your hearts prepare Jesus as Lord, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do so with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience. It's not actually speaking to me, whose job title is Christian apologist. It's speaking to the regular, butt in the pew, faithful believer who's living a life that is expressing something that is meriting, that people are going to ask about that hope. What's different about you? And the answer is Jesus.
That's good. Yeah, living a life that is different from the rest of the world, that is a sweet aroma. I think of the passage, live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see your good deeds, and that could lead them to glorify God on the day he returns, glorify Jesus when he returns, right? So I think you're spot on there. So for folks who are trying to hit the home run without first learning, hey, let's just step up to the plate. Give us a little bit about the stuff you were doing before anybody was familiar with you. Like, your level of expertise wasn't developed overnight. It was developed, and it wasn't developed in front of the world. It was developed in a quiet place. Tell us what that was like, going to school, learning the things you've had to learn, being in ministry. Give us a little bit about of that background.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this a little bit on different platforms, but I was fully convinced coming out of high school that I was going to be a police officer, that I was going to go into the police force. I was going to pursue being a police detective, and that was the trajectory that I was going to go on. And it was really feeling the conviction of the Spirit in my life via other people as well, speaking into my life and hearing that godly wisdom from individuals who knew more about that particular road. And then stepping out in faith in areas that were a little bit uncomfortable. I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew that if I went to seminary and I graduated with a degree in theology, I couldn't take my diploma to the apologetics factory because that didn't exist. And so I couldn't put in my application for that type of career. The career wasn't a thing that existed. And so there was a little bit of fear and trepidation in terms of God's leading in my life, but knowing that I had a passion, that I felt a calling, not any type of voice from heaven or something like that, but just feeling the weight of people who didn't know Jesus and just the excitement of this book that held these truths and had a history to it and spanned centuries, and that you can dig into the languages that was originally written in. And when you hold an English translation in your hand today, that has a long history. It didn't fall out of the sky with a leather cover and, nice gold edging on the pages, that there's a history to that, right? It wasn't written on golden plates that we dug up in the forest. And so there's something to that, right? And that's exciting in and of itself, the way that God has preserved his word through normal people who do things like make scribal mistakes, who make spelling errors. And that plays into the reason why we can have confidence that what we have now is what the original authors wrote. And so this being, trying to be faithful in the abilities that God had given me and the opportunities in particular. Learning languages isn't necessarily my strong suit. I wouldn't say that that is a gifting that I have. I know some people who genuinely have that, but I just took that journey as something that I felt passionate about, even though I didn't necessarily have the giftings to naturally just kind of pick up the Greek New Testament and have that just kind of intuitively make sense. It was a long, storied time of, I had a professor at one point who said that learning the biblical languages is going to be like when Jacob wrestled with the angel, that you got to hold on and it'll bless you eventually, but you might walk away limping. And there were times where I walked away limping, and that was okay. But just the faithfulness in that, of seeing that this is something that is rewarding, to pick up a Greek New Testament or a Hebrew Old Testament and be able to read that and understand that and communicate that to others, in giving them confidence that when they hold their English translation, that it is actually what the Hebrew and Greek say, that it's not masked in some kind of obscurity because
Mm-hmm.
it's an ancient language, or that
Mm-hmm.
you have to listen to this person who actually has the secret knowledge because they can understand some sort of meaning behind the Greek. No, you pick up an NIV or an ESV or an NLT, and it says pretty much what the Greek and Hebrew say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. How many total years of education have you now been able to do from your preliminary to now you're in a PhD program? I'm not sure if you ended up finishing it or not. Yeah. How many years is that total?
I think I'm in grade 28, 29. I still a student, still very much a student. I'm trying to wrap up my PhD dissertation, but it's been a long journey, and there were gaps. Right, I graduated high school and I did missions overseas for a little bit. I was in the Middle East, and then I was in Rwanda, and then I did an undergraduate program in sociology. Like I said, with full intention of eventually going on to police college, but instead of doing that, I went on and I did a master's of theological studies, ended up starting another master's degree after that, a THM. But I put that on pause shortly after I started it because I was recruited to do apologetics work with an organization called Power to Change, which is the Canadian version of Crew. And so I worked with them for close to 5 years. But in the midst of that, I put it on pause so I could support Raise, so that I could do the missions work on the university campuses. But I paused that, and actually throughout that whole time, I was continuing to work on my language studies. In fact, one of the reasons why I started taking the second master's degree instead of going right into a PhD program is because I felt that I needed to kind of bulk that up, that I needed to make sure that I had the competency in going into something that required me to be able to fluently pick up a Greek New Testament. And although I felt some level of being able to do that, I needed to have, that really solidified for me. And so started that second master's degree, put it on pause, and then the opportunity came up due to a number of different factors that I could drop that master's degree and apply for the PhD program directly. And even that was a risk. I was dropping the master's degree. I had to de-enroll and then re-enroll, and there was no guarantee that would happen, that I would get into the PhD program, that I would get the supervisor that I was, pursuing in that program. And it did. It fell into place. So it was, 4 years of undergraduate studies, 2 years of a master's, started another 3-year master's, and then transitioned that into a PhD program, which I'd been at for way too long. But life and family and ministry and all those good things.
Yeah. There's something you said earlier. I want to unpack a few words, one of which is stewardship and faithfulness. We're going to come back to that. But you said passion. And I have this section I wanted to highlight for you. You've checked out some of the book, Godly Ambition. But I think the way you use the word, I think people can misconstrue it in a way. So let me share what I wrote and see what you think about this, right? So this says, choosing your vocation is not about finding something you love to do so much you do it for free. And if you can make money from it, whoop-de-doo. No, finding something you're passionate about that you're willing to sacrifice yourself for it, to lay down your life for it, to endure agony. It's not about never working a day in your life. It's about finding so much meaning in your work that you allow the work to transform you. If you do it as easy, your life will be hard. But if you do it as hard, your life will be easy. Passion allows us to choose the hard things in life so that over the long haul, life will become easier. Don't separate passion from pain. If you honor your passions, expect the road to be rewarding but not easy. And then I go on to say how the second definition of passion in the dictionary actually refers to the passion of the Christ. The second definition refers to the suffering of Jesus. He shows us that passion and pain intermingle for the most beautiful life imaginable. Again, I'm not putting our work on the same level as Jesus's, but as his disciples, we should follow his example by accepting pain as a natural part of doing great things for the kingdom. So I think sometimes we deal with the idea of passion as a very superficial, I just feel this thing in my heart to go and build this thing, right? But the reality is that biblical passion, and I would say the sustainable passion, is way more comfortable embracing discomfort, way more comfortable in agony, way more comfortable in working through and having a master's program, doing another master's program, and then doing the PhD program, right? That is true passion that will lead to sustain you in terms of your vocation. I think oftentimes people are just like, what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about basketball, so I'm going to be a professional basketball player. It's like, no, like that's not how it works. So I'm not sure if you want to speak into that idea of passion within the context of vocation, but I think it's a huge one. And this is from the chapter 3, the chapter on calling in my book, Godly Ambition. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think our passion should be investments in our character, in that what excites us should ultimately lead to an end that is not necessarily something that is going to be, say, financially savvy. I remember there's this conversation I had with my wife, Melissa, when we were driving in a car. I can picture where we were, although I don't know where we were driving to, or even actually when this took place. It was before we had kids, but she was kind of struggling with the fact that, she was graduating teachers college and thinking about, she's done all this school, but she really wants to be a mom. And does that mean that all the school was a waste? And us talking about the fact that no, all of that education was an investment in herself, in that she was learning things that she would take on, even if it was just discipline, right? Even if the degree was just learning to be disciplined and learning to make sacrifices for the purpose of this degree or what have you. And that that passion should lead to something that builds our character up in who we are. And there's going to come a time, that you kind of had that refrain, something that you love so much that you never work a day in your life. Well, if it's a true passion, the danger is that you're going to work every day of your life because you love it so much, right? Because you want to put all of you into it. And there's a danger in that too, right? And that it can cause things like burnout. Because the lines will blur if you make your career and your passion cross over, in that in some ways, punching in and punching out in a 9-to-5 is way easier. And so the level of that passion, ultimately, like a Christ-centered passion, will be one that is going to sanctifyingly move you towards being conformed to the image of Jesus. Amen. And no matter what that is, and there's this line from I think it's in Martin Luther's Table Talks, where he says that the godly cobbler, right, someone who mends and makes shoes, that his expression of his faith isn't by sewing little crosses into the tongues of shoes, but by making really good shoes. And so all of those things that we do should be an act of worship, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be overt. I had a conversation with an individual, a mentor of mine, Andy Bannister, who now works out in the UK. And he was telling me, when I was talking with him about, pursuing ministry in a more formal way, and him saying, you know what, Wes, that as someone who was currently in active full-time ministry, he said, you might actually have more opportunities evangelistically as a layperson than I do, in that you can talk to unbelievers in a secular workplace, and that could afford more one-on-one relational evangelism than me talking on a stage. And taking that to heart and really thinking about that and the implications of that sometimes we glorify something like full-time ministry and fail to realize that wherever God has put you, right? Because we have this grass is greener on the other side mentality, but no, grass is green where you water it. And it's going to be green if you're investing where you are and you're pursuing, not for our own sake, but for the sake of the kingdom.
I love that. What I feel like you exhibit well is the counter of what we see in society today. We see a lot of folks who aspire for influence without expertise. And one of the beautiful things is that you have the expertise, and it's because you had the expertise that then you developed the influence. And I think that's been the beautiful part about watching your journey. So when you say that, I instantly think of moments, you on Joe Rogan, you with Andrew Schultz, you having these conversations with folks who perhaps aren't waving the banner of Christianity or Jesus just yet, but you're in an evangelistic setting that, yes, had you just been in a full-time ministry context, preaching from stages, which all of that is amazing, the same doors to evangelize wouldn't have opened. And so what do you make of the space where we're at, where we have influence without expertise as kind of the North Star, unfortunately, that drives a lot of people in today's climate?
Yeah, I think that's dangerous, because I think what it will often force people to do is make shortcuts that ultimately will not benefit them personally, or it's like cutting corners in the building of a bridge. You don't cut corners when you build bridges, because if the bridge does not have a firm foundation, if the engineering isn't sound, well, the bridge is going to collapse and everyone on the bridge is going to end up in the river. And that can have ramifications that go beyond simply the bridge breaking. Like it can lead people, it can have a negative influence on their lives, right? They could die. And so it's making the small progressions of first, and that's why I said earlier, it's investment in yourself. You shouldn't cut corners on your character. You shouldn't cut corners in the way that you invest in yourself, whether that's with your health, or whether that's with your family, or whether that's with your career, because it's just not worth it. And the limelight isn't all it's cracked up to be. And the lie of the influence is that you are the sum of your actions. You're not the sum of your actions. And society is going to tell you that, but it's not true. And so God is going to use you no matter what position or status or vocation that he has led you in. And, we're called in scripture to lead a quiet life. And pursuing the limelight can be dangerous, because it's the opposite of that.
Yeah, it's like pursuing money for the sake of money, instead of pursuing money as a byproduct of being effective at something and having a craft that's valuable in the marketplace. You just want the end result without the process of what it takes to deliver. It's like pursuing being jacked just for the sake of being jacked. It's like, yeah, you could take a bunch of drugs and you could take a bunch of stuff to get you super jacked, but man, that comes with consequences. Not outside of the vanity and the body dysmorphia that many bodybuilders end up dealing with. Like, you're pursuing something trying to just get to the end result without the process transforming you from the inside out. So there's nothing wrong with becoming super fit. There's nothing wrong with earning money. There's nothing wrong with becoming successful. It's just, if you're going after the end result and not embracing the process, it could be very, very detrimental to your health, right? So I think that's the part that a lot of folks aren't calculating for. One of my favorite verses in the Psalms is Psalm 24:1, which says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it." And you mentioned the idea of stewardship earlier, right? And so sometimes that word, like stewardship, it sounds like a lofty Christian term, but the idea of stewardship is quite simply living out that verse. It's living out the idea that God owns everything. God owns me, and my life is not my own, and my body's not my own, and my family's not my own, and my career is not my own, and my influence is not, like, none of it is mine. It's all on loan to me by God to manage and steward it in a way that brings glory to him. Similar, if I was asked to house sit for a buddy of mine that has a beautiful mansion, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going away," there would be some expectations for me to not throw parties, to make sure I tidy up, to make sure I go check the mail, to make sure I'm taking care of his place, right? And so the idea of stewardship is sometimes we miss that our lives are not our own, that we think that we have main character syndrome, right? But when you look at it from the lens of stewardship, it's like, none of this is mine. This is all given to me by God to manage onto his glory. Can you speak a little bit into that with regards to a holistic picture of all these different elements that people are after? People want to earn more money. They want to be in better shape. But if you're just pursuing those things without the proper anchoring, again, it can lead us into some trappings that become worldly.
Yeah, I think even if we have good motivations, if our methods by attaining those motivations are incorrect,
Mhm.
then the ends justifying the means will always become complicated, right? If you want to get jacked and you want to get strong, so you take all the drugs prematurely and you compromise your health.
Mhm.
Well, sure, you might feel strong in for however many months you're taking a cycle or whatever's going on there, but it's not going to actually make you a healthy individual. It's
Mhm.
not going to lead to a flourishing life. It's going to compromise your health. It's going to, physically and mentally,
Mhm.
and you're going to damage yourself and people around you. It's so that the stewardship is exactly what you said, Ruslan. Understanding that these things are given to you for the purpose of you glorifying God. That all of our acts, professionally, personally, they're acts of worship. And so if we can see our lives within the framework of a worshipful mindset, then that's going to change our perspective on how we do things.
Yeah.
It's gonna recalibrate our understanding. And of course, we're not going to do that well. Um, we we endeavor to do it, but that's why. I remember reading recently a theology of sleep, and
Mhm.
it basically saying like there's a reason why you turn into a sack of potatoes for like 8 hours every 24 hours. It's because God is reminding you that you need to slow down, you need to rest.
Yeah.
There are limitations to who you are, and that's a good thing. And the stewardship part of that is understanding your limitations and handing those over to God and letting your life be that worshipful reflection of
Mhm.
how you can glorify him in all things, small and large.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing. I think the way that I am trying to bridge this together for people as people are looking at what is their calling, why are they here? The way I'm trying to fuse this together is that stewardship and godly ambition in my framework are interchangeable, right? Like godly ambition, that healthy ambition that is anchored in Jesus, anchored in his word, is ultimately reflected and made revealed to the rest of the world in the idea of stewardship. I really want you to pick up my brand new book, Godly Ambition. You can get it at whatever retailer you prefer. We have links pinned below. It comes out September 9th. But right now, if you pre-order it, you can go to mygodlyambition.com. After you pre-order it, you can get a screenshot of your receipt, go to mygodlyambition.com, hit claim pre-order access, and upload your screenshot to get the first 3 chapters along with the intro chapter and an ambition action worksheet to help you work through how do you discover your purpose and your calling now. So this is available right now. This will get emailed to you as soon as you pre-order it. Again, the link is pinned up in the comment and in the description below.